orders.
Madam Secretary, this is a
It's
simple
the
question. I'm
president's
asking,
prerogative on
Madam-
conversations that
Madam
happen
Chair,
with the president of El
I
Salvador.
ask a simple question. We have a limited amount of time. I just asked you, Madam Secretary.
Ma'am, I'm looking for a yes or no question. Yes or no. Do you believe the Constitution? Yes, ma'am. Do you,
We have
ma'am?
not conducted in
Claiming my
any
time,
kind of
Mr.
impoundment.
Chairman. Okay, Secretary Noem, I'm just looking for a yes or no here. Do you believe the Constitution guarantees due process to everyone in America?
Honestly, it just makes you furious sometimes, seeing this blatant disregard for how our government is even supposed to work.
It really does.
Welcome to the Deep Dive Report Show with Mike and Sam. Today, we are digging into some exchanges from congressional hearings, Trump administration officials that are just jaw-dropping. We're talking about a level of contempt for the Constitution that is, frankly, shocking.
Yeah, it's beyond simple political disagreement, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're looking at transcripts that, well, they seem to show a pattern, a real dismissal of basic legal and constitutional norms. Our job today is to unpack some specific moments, really get into what was being said and what it implies.
Okay, let's kick off with Representative Lauren Underwood confronting Kristi Noem, who was secretary. The issue is the power of the purse. You know, Article 1 of the Constitution. Congress controls the money. Period.
The absolute bedrock of legislative power.
Right. And Underwood is grilling Noem about the administration just freezing, terminating, even clawing back funds Congress had already put into law, taxpayer money allocated for specific things. So Underwood asks her straight up, does the administration think it can just ignore appropriations law? Let's play that part.
This gets right to the core. I mean, the separation of powers. Congress says spend money here, the executive branch is supposed to do it. Underwood's pushing Noem. Do you think you can just unilaterally override that?
Okay, here's the essence of that exchange about appropriations.
Excellent. Let's start with Article 1, which gives Congress and only Congress the power of the purse. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. But this administration is freezing, terminating, and even clawing back federal grants and awards that were already signed into law. These are taxpayer dollars that were appropriated by Congress for the specific purposes that we laid out. So, Secretary, let me ask you, do you believe the administration has the authority to subvert appropriations law to freeze and terminate congressional funding?
The administration and the Department of Homeland Security used our authorities that we have to evaluate every grant that was in front of us and meet statutory requirements, but also to make sure that they were being spent appropriate.
So, of course, the president is within his authorities.
Make sure
Ma'am, this is my time.
Forward.
Thank you so much. Of course, the president's within his authorities to drive policy decisions within the bounds of federal law and the Constitution, but that's not what you've been doing. What I'm asking is whether you believe you have the authority to ignore appropriations law. Do you believe that the Constitution gives the executive branch unilateral authority to withhold funds appropriated by the legislative branch?
We have evaluated grants to make sure if they're being spent appropriately, and work that is underway and was authorized has continued. Other grants that have not been started and have not been authorized or obligated, we have reevaluated.
Well,
and I think
still just evaluating grants.
Exactly. It's the evasion, isn't it? Underwood asks a direct, fundamental question. Can you ignore Congress's power of the purse? And Noem just keeps talking about evaluating grants. It's not a yes, it's not a no, it's a complete sidestep.
It really is. The takeaway is that refusal to engage with the core constitutional principle. Can the executive just say, nope, not spending that money Congress allocated,
Right.
and Noem ducks it? Like Underwood points out, this isn't some fuzzy area courts have repeatedly backed Congress on this. It just screams disregard for the law, for the balance of power.
Okay, then the conversation moves to another huge one.
No.
Due process. Does everyone in this country get due process under the Constitution, even non-citizens?
The 5th and 14th Amendments. No person shall be deprived. It's fundamental stuff.
So Underwood asks Noem if the administration actually believes this applies to everyone, regardless of citizenship. Let's hear that bit.
Yeah, this is critical. Due process is supposed to guarantee fairness. What's the administration's view on who gets that fairness?
All right, here's that exchange on due process.
This administration is not just ignoring the constitutional power of the people's elected representatives. It is also violating the fundamental right of individuals. Do you believe that the Constitution grants everyone in our country the right to due process, including non-citizens?
the administration has the authority to.
Ma'am, I'm looking for a yes or no question. Yes or no. Do you believe the Constitution? Yes, ma'am. Do you,
we have
ma'am?
not conducted in
Claiming
any
my
kind
time,
of
Mr. Chairman. Okay. Secretary Noem, I'm just looking for a yes or no here. Do you believe the Constitution guarantees due process to everyone in America?
Due process is exactly what this Congress lays
Yes
out.
or no?
It is,
Okay,
and the
ma'am,
tools
I'll take
you
that as
give
a
us
no.
on due
Right.
process.
Again, zero direct affirmation. Due process is what Congress lays out. What does that even mean in this context? It sounds like she's saying it's not a fundamental constitutional right for everyone, just something Congress might decide to grant.
And that's deeply problematic. Underwood calling it a no feels spot on. It suggests these rights aren't inherent, just statutory privileges Congress can define, which, as Underwood also mentions, flies in the face of judge after judge ruling the administration wasn't following the law, wasn't providing that due process. It's alarming.
And following that, Underwood delivers this really powerful statement about the oath of office, the oath they both took. It's a gut punch reminder of where loyalties are supposed to lie.
Yeah, that oath is everything. It's about the Constitution, above all else.
Let's hear what she said. Underwood states.
To date.
That is
Secretary
not true.
Noem, that was not a question. Secretary Noem, that oath that we both swore before taking office was to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. Not the president, not a political party, the Constitution. And that's what we're going to keep doing here at the Appropriations Committee. Thank you. I yield back.
Not the president, not a political party, the Constitution. That just lays it bare, doesn't it? That fundamental duty. Loyalty to the system, to the founding document, not to a person or a party.
Absolutely vital. That oath is the promise. It's the commitment to the rule of law, to the whole framework. Underwood spelling it out like that is, well, it's a necessary and damning indictment in that context.
Okay, so then the hearing shifts focus.
Yeah.
Underwood gives her assessment of Homeland Security under Trump, and folks, it is grim. She paints a picture of, increased danger and wildly misplaced priorities.
Which is terrifying, given that DHS's whole reason for existing is, protecting the homeland. Her assessment calls that entire mission into question during that period.
Listen to how she opens the section, Underwood says. So let me begin with some facts that I think are important for the American people to hear about what you're doing with their money. Because 3 months into this administration, America is more vulnerable than it's ever been. Our homeland is not secure. In the first 100 days of the Trump administration, you have slashed our nation's cyber defenses, letting Russia, China, and Iran steal our top secrets and Americans' personal data. You've wasted hundreds of millions of dollars on illegal detention and deportation, including some people who are trying to come into this country, quote, the legal way within our broken immigration system, despite, by the department's own admission, southern border encounters already at record lows. Sent emails to U.S. citizens that read, please leave the United States immediately. Removed U.S. citizen children, including those with terminal illnesses.
Oh my God.
I know, right? Slashing cyber defenses against Russia, China, Iran, wasting hundreds of millions on deportations, even people trying to follow the rules, sending emails telling U.S. citizens to leave, removing sick U.S. citizen children. I mean, it's just breathtakingly awful stuff.
If these claims are accurate, and she's stating them as facts in a hearing, the implications are just staggering.
Yeah.
National security risks, human rights violations, weakened cyber defenses alone are a nightmare scenario. And the actions against citizens, well, it's beyond the pale. Needs serious, serious investigation.
And it gets worse. Underwood talks about billions cut from projects meant to make infrastructure resilient, including a bipartisan program Trump himself signed, and money being diverted from the actual DHS workforce, potentially for, get this, political ads.
So cutting resilience, cutting the workforce, and potentially using taxpayer money for political messaging instead of, security.
That seems to be the allegation. Let's hear her detail some of these financial shenanigans. Underwood continues. During our Member Day hearing last month, I also raised the unacceptable and unconstitutional decisions this administration has been making with the funds provided to the department by this committee, including the sudden and unexplained termination of DHS grants to states' universities and nonprofit organizations, the cancellation of the disaster relief funds, BRIC program violations of the Fifth Amendment right to due process enshrined in the Constitution, and reductions in force of parts of the department's Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office of Citizenship and Immigration Services Ombudsman, as well as the Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman. I also have serious concerns with the administration's decision to revoke the bargaining rights for DHS personnel, with an exception made for unions that have vocally supported the president.
Okay, this is just stunning. Killing grants without explanation, axing disaster relief like the BRIC program, due process violations again, gutting the offices meant to protect civil rights and handle complaints.
And revoking union rights unless the union was publicly pro-Trump.
It suggests a pattern of undermining the core functions, the oversight, the civil rights protections, even the workforce itself, potentially all tied to political loyalty. It paints a picture of an agency being bent to political will, not its actual mission.
Underwood wraps this part up by pointing out DHS was basically cashing checks it simply doesn't have, like spending money hoping Congress would bail them out later. And then she drops this line, this incredibly stark statement about American democracy.
Yeah, a statement that really shouldn't need to be said, but clearly she felt it did.
Here it is. But the Trump administration's actions have pushed us to unprecedented and to a sobering moment. America is a democracy, not a dictatorship.
Wow.
The fact that a sitting member of Congress in a hearing felt the need to say that America is a democracy, not a dictatorship, tells you everything about the level of alarm, the perceived threat to fundamental norms.
It really does. It's a chilling reminder of basic principles potentially being eroded. It reframes the entire discussion. This isn't just policy disputes. It's about the very nature of the government.
And it wasn't just Underwood. Senator Gary Peters apparently had a heck of a time getting answers to. Sent 9 oversight letters, got like 2 replies back, 1 useless. More stonewalling, basically.
Which is classic obstruction of congressional oversight, right? It cripples Congress's ability to do its job, to hold the executive branch accountable.
Peters also challenged Noem on what she meant by getting CISA, that's the cyber agency, back on mission. Noem apparently threw out this straw man argument about a ministry of truth and misinformation.
Oh, that talking point, yeah, deflecting from the real issues by bringing up some unrelated bogeyman. Peters had to point out that CISA's work in that area was actually really limited and stopped anyway. It shows a pattern, perhaps, of not engaging honestly with oversight.
Okay, last one, but it's a doozy. Senator Van Hollen asks about a specific case, Kilmore Abrego Garcia, and a unanimous Supreme Court order about facilitating his return. Let's just hear Noem's response to whether DHS is complying.
A unanimous Supreme Court order that carries immense weight. Complying shouldn't even be a question.
You'd think. Here's
So
Noem.
because the court ordered that you facilitate his return, so you are facilitating his return.
Sir, Senator, thank you for the question, but what I would
Madam
tell you
Secretary.
is that we are following court orders,
Madam
and
Secretary.
that your advocacy for a known terrorist is alarming to me.
Madam Secretary.
It's alarming to me because he's a human smuggler.
Madam
he's a
Secretary,
wife
I'm going to have to
beater,
reclaim
and
my
a
time.
terrorist, and
Madam-
he's not a U.S. citizen. He's a citizen of El Salvador, and he's home. If he were to come
Madam-
back
Madam
here,
Secretary.
we would take him immediately.
All right,
back.
I'm going to have to.
Unbelievable. So she says they're following court orders, but then calls the guy a terrorist, a human smuggler, says he's home in El Salvador, and they'll grab him if he returns. That sounds like the opposite of complying with an order to facilitate his return.
It absolutely does. It's an outright dismissal of due process, a dismissal of a unanimous Supreme Court ruling. And just throwing around labels like terrorist and human smuggler without any context provided there, it's appalling. It's just total willingness to ignore the judiciary, ignore due process if it suits them.
That exchange is deeply, deeply troubling. It encapsulates so much of the concern, the seeming contempt for judicial authority, for basic fairness, for the rule of law itself.
So looking back at this whole deep dive, the pattern seems pretty clear, doesn't it? These exchanges, particularly with Secretary Noem, they just reveal this consistent contempt for constitutional norms, for the separation of powers, for due process, for basic oversight within the Trump administration.
It's a stark picture. These transcripts, they're more than just political theater. They are a window, a really disturbing window, into how a significant part of a political movement viewed, and maybe still views, the foundational principles of American governance. Understanding this history is crucial.
Absolutely. Understanding these threats, it remained absolutely critical work for all of us.
Couldn't agree more. Reflecting on this history isn't just academic. It's about vigilance. It's about safeguarding those principles that were so clearly under pressure in these exchanges.
You've been listening to the Deep Dive Report Show. We hope this breakdown was insightful. Please keep tuning in as we continue to explore important stories like this one.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
And hey, if you value this kind of analysis, please do us a favor. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and definitely click that notification bell so you don't miss what's next. We'll catch you next time with more breaking news and deep dives.